The Media Project. The Vermont Technology Alliance. The VTTA is the only statewide organization focused on Vermont's tech business sector and entrepreneurs. Our business members are Fortune 500 companies, startup founders, small business owners, and soloists. We provide advocacy, recruiting of tech talent, events, and other networking opportunities. We are the heart of the tech ecosystem in Vermont. Become a member now at vtta.org. The Vermont Technology Alliance. Tech thrives here.
And we are live. This is Ryan Munn, Scott Graves. We've got a guest, Justin Loringer, today, and we are here on Innovato 2 talking to an aspiring Vermont entrepreneur who has started their business in Vermont and looking to move here and join us in this great little state, talking about identity, Web3, and what is in a name. So, Justin, I want to kind of kick it off real quick. If I missed anything there, I'd like you to expand on that introduction and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Scott, as well. I'm Justin Loringer. I'm from Massachusetts. Also went to UMass Lowell, just like Scott. Want to throw that in there?
Look at that.
We got some camaraderie going.
By the way, what's up with people from Massachusetts wanting to move to Vermont? Why do all you Flatlanders want to come here? I don't get it.
So part of who I am is somebody that's lived a fast-paced life around here, and it doesn't have any social connectivity. I live on a half-acre plot surrounded by other people. Haven't had anyone check in on how I am. Haven't had anyone inquire, not people waving from their deck. The sense of community kind of feels lost when you cram everyone in together versus when you leave a little bit of distance between homes, you kind of need your neighbors sometimes as well, even if it's just to not be lonely. So part of who I am is a little socialite that DJ'd down in Boston, went to UMass Lowell, ended up working in tech sales as an English major, funny enough. And now I'm selling my home in the next 2 months, gonna move back home, get my master's, and keep developing my company. I eventually want to make it up to Vermont, to around the West Dover area, and start a Web3 tech incubator. So I just want to have 4 to 8 people working on companies, starting companies up in Vermont, wake up with a beautiful view, and have it be in a place that I feel like I can actually make some change in a good way. So to help people out, Vermont Everyone Eats, get that going again, Meals on Wheels, just things to help the community as well. So
Awesome.
A tangent on who I am, a little neurodivergent, and here we go.
Yeah. Well, and share us a little bit more on your tech background, specifically in security and identity, and how you've even gone a little bionic.
All right. So back when I was a kid, one of the fun stories I tell is the family and relatives wanted to go on a Disney cruise. I have thalassophobia. I don't like boats and stuff either. So I was like, I want to stay home with my dad, get a Razor scooter, downloaded an emulator of Earthbound, and played Super Nintendo. So that's what I did. And on the tech side of things, I graduated from UMass Lowell, went to Putnam Investments. That was just 401k, answer the phone, be seen and not heard type of thing. Left there to do business development at Nuance. So now I was working with AI, chatbots, voice biometrics, and I started learning about the different parts of identity. When I was at Putnam, you have to do security clearance before someone can do anything in their 401k account. So then you go from IDV, like identity verification, all the way over to dealing with it on kind of the enterprise level and small, medium business. So now people call in, and at many banks, my voice is my password. So I helped to sell that technology as a business dev rep. Then I spent 5 years at RSA, actually, cutting my teeth when it came to sales. Closed $10 million in software sales. And I don't think it's around here that I can find it. I cleaned up my house, the little RSA dongles, but we used to sell those, the hardware tokens, secure ID. So I dealt with for 5 years, multi-factor authentication, identity and access management, and then identity governance and lifecycle. So your movers, joiners, and leavers. And for me, over the last couple of years, on the way that this ties into the Web3 digital identity, I realized a couple of years back from friends, you can own your name on the blockchain. And what we can really get into deep later, which I want to, is about ownership of that. So you can now own your name, have it be behind private keys in a crypto wallet. That's yours. You own it. You're responsible for it. Nobody else can be it. So once I learned that you could do that years ago, I spent over 6 figures on domains.
So I want to bring a little bit of a Scott story into this too. And I'm not sure if you can drop names, Scott, but I know you've had some personal experience in business with conflicts over names.
Boston, city of Boston.
Oh, yeah, I guess we can't really name names. And for all clarity, it has nothing to do with me personally, but I was associated with a Boston-based digital radio outfit some time ago. This is over a decade ago, whose owner was one of the pioneers. I mean, every location in the United States had one of these pioneers, right? Where they started buying up all of the domains for, key things that they thought would be very valuable at some time in the medium to long term, that they could then have a windfall of cash by selling them, right? And this person decided to buy up all of the Boston geographic and neighborhood and also metro-centric names. So things like, fortpointchannel.com and, backbay.com, .net, all those. And long story made very short, near about the third time he tried to garner a large windfall from the city of Boston. This is during the Mayor Menino regime, the end of the 90s, beginning of the aughts. It ran afoul, as it were, with the city of Boston management, and I don't know. There was a certain point at which we never heard from him ever again. So I'm not suggesting I believe he's still with us. I'm not suggesting, that he's underneath a bridge or anything like that. But, it is the city of Whitey Bulger after all, though. So
he's with Jimmy Hoffa.
One never knows. He's with Hoffa. Justin, right? There's him, Hoffa, and Whitey Bulger. They're all under the same bridge.
There's a lot in a name, right? It's an important thing. And even small distinctions can make a big difference. And so it's an interesting challenge to consider. I mean, even there's people out there with the same name as us sometimes. And, what do we do to differentiate, right? And it's also, I bet you can speak to, Justin, there's been some pretty significant exploits in the past where someone's been able to hack DNS and make it so that, someone types in what they think is a right web address, and it is a right web address, but even the DNS can get hacked and then direct people to something nefarious.
Yeah, and on that point, and Scott, you'll remember this as well. Who else remembers whitehouse.com versus whitehouse.gov?
Oh, yeah.
Yep. That was the big one back in the day. And that's just basically like TLD swapping, which is just, that's kind of what these names are as well, .eth versus .sol or .crypto. But on that part of the swapping, the way that it can really get bad on the blockchain is when you go to type these things in on Venmo or PayPal, which they work in the US now, these .eth names, the entire page on your phone is just blank below that. There's no warnings. There's no, hey, this isn't who you think it is. And an example is Walmart. I have a screenshot because I typed in walmart.eth on Venmo. You can try it right now if you had crypto in there. And it just says send to them. It shows the address below. That's the end of it. So my whole thing with this is there is more information you can glance from that. There's the resolved address that they give you. There's the expiration date. There's the controller. There's text records. Why aren't those populating in the wallet first to give you a little bit of information so you know who you're transacting with or associating with? And what I like to draw this back to is think about right now, the three of us on this call. If someone messages either of you and says, hey, I heard you have a podcast, I want to get involved, what are you going to do first to make sure that's an actual human being? Are you going to click on their profile? You're going to look to see if you have mutual friends. You're going to look online to see if they pop up anywhere. Do they have a LinkedIn? Have they been on LinkedIn for a long time, or was it created, a couple of days ago? You're going to do all these sorts of things that you personally do to verify who people are. But why aren't we setting more of a standard for that for everyone else out there, especially the people that don't even know how to do it or where to search for it? So what's in a name is important because it's leaving a digital breadcrumb trail right now as well.
And I'm going to guess that for the vast majority of institutions and individuals who are, behind even considering, like deeply considering, what is in a name, right? What can my name in the digital realm tell others, right? There's no standard around that. And that's part of what you're knee deep in, in the work that you do. So, what truly is at stake? Don't tell us just, this is what, from a security stake is at a loss of, but I feel like we're even redefining what identity is, right? In all of this conversation, all this talk about what exactly can be behind the name, what information is that name conveying? Because in the digital realm, that's virtually limitless, right? Or am I thinking of it in the wrong way?
No, you're thinking in the right way, because when these first started back in 2017, Ethereum name service started. That's the majority of what this conversation will entail. So when Ethereum name service was started, you could get those .eth names, but they didn't resolve anywhere. You couldn't go in MetaMask and type them. You couldn't go anywhere like that. All it really gave you is if you wanted to find somebody on the blockchain, you didn't have this long hexadecimal letter and number, hodgepodge that you had to copy and paste. Copy and pasting things like that, you can copy and paste incorrectly. You can paste something that was previous. You can mess up the last letter. There's all sorts of things that can happen there. But in a name itself, there's provenance as well. Are you that company and you got it first and you're on the blockchain? Or in a situation like I'm in, I have a lot of companies' names. I've given quite a few companies their names for free. No matter what happens in the future, if I want to draw this whole Web3 IAM thing together, I would be that central point that all of these companies or entities are getting their name from. And then that leads into the verification part, which is like my business type of thing. So as far as like the value of a name and what it's worth, one story I wrote down that I wanted to tell you about, Ryan, was the company Ledger. A lot of people know Ledger for basically cold wallet storage for crypto. So you put it on there. There's no connection to the internet from that. You're air gapping it. Ledger, the company, someone owned ledger.eth and was trying to sell it to them for $35,000 publicly, was tweeting to them over and over, getting people from ENS to tag them, trying to digitally bully a company to purchase their name. They said no, and they bought LDGR.eth for $140 a year instead of $35,000, but that's not the name of their company. So everywhere that you go to look out there for it, they're never going to have it. But also, is your name, if it's a brand, will you sacrifice some of that if it's a generic term? So if your company name was cell phone, you can't trademark terms like that. So in that same sense, I mean, you could try, but is that name really going to be something that you care if someone else has? We're seeing other companies go for different forms of these. And I have a fear, and it's kind of, this is a little out there. With ENS, so many of these companies' names are already squatted by people that aren't them, that if a bunch of companies finally say, well, what way do we want to get on the blockchain? And those companies meet and have consortiums, especially about digital identity. And they go, well, all of our names are squatted on ENS and people want $1 million. We don't know who they are, so we can't ACPA it. And you can't UDRP a Web3 domain. You can't just universal domain resolution process that out of somebody's wallet because it's protected by their keys, which goes back to ownership. So as far as like not owning your name as a company, a lot of companies don't because they haven't got there first. But to teeter back into cybersecurity, Scott, it's like proactive cybersecurity is a lot more affordable than reactive. Yeah. And I saw that with a lot of different companies. And that's where I don't think some of these companies are going to buy their names. They could spend the money on a private investigator to find out who owns it and just send them a CPA.
Clearly, you've thought a lot about this, not just the this is what I do for a living and this is, the thing I do, but you're thinking about the trend, you're thinking about what the future holds. Could you see a time if, let's say, as a scenario, there becomes global adoption amongst maybe not even all, but a healthy group of countries that decide that cryptocurrency of one form or another is going to become the accepted currency, right? That they're going to trade in, and therefore blockchain suddenly becomes even more important than it already is. Is there a holiday under which, because it's going to be so important for companies and individuals to have true ownership over their true name, right? That there's a holiday where, sorry guys, but the impetus is so much more important now to the long-term global financial health of all these countries or the whole planet itself. If we got everybody involved at the same time, that all of you that went and squatted on all of these domains, sorry, you don't own them anymore, because we need the accurate names to go to all of the people whose names those actually are. Or is it just going to have to be, well, it's never going to happen because it's not fair or for any other set of reasons? And,
Well, it's not going to happen because it's not possible.
So explain that to me, who doesn't understand. It is interesting.
I'll jump in here a little bit and then you can fill in, Justin. But, what they would need to do is they would need to create their own extension, their own naming resolution, or convert the existing DNS, domain name services, into a blockchain-based service. So what they need to do is pull .coms into a blockchain-based solution so that they then actually own those domains. Because right now they own them on paper, but they don't own them in a technical sense, in the fact that the blockchain domains are locked behind that private key. So they can't just say, no, you have to give them to us. They have to actually get that private key, wrest it from their cold, dead hands, and then use that private key to transfer ownership of that domain to whoever they think deserves it. And that brings up really this broader question of what is identity, right? Because today, what is identity? The answer is it's whatever the country that you live in or the state that you live in defines identity as. And that is based on a paper-based system. No matter how electronic it may seem to be, it is purely
still backed up by
it's still backed up by the processes and systems that you use for paper, just digitized. Whereas this type of name is a purely digital native type of name. And so they'd have to either create their own extensions, their own resolution services, and create a new blockchain solution that provides a naming solution, or they'd have to actually convince people or identify them and go beat them up and take it.
Or just pay them. I'm thinking about that. You can just pay them, right?
Yeah, but here's one fun part about that. I've had this concept that some companies, when they want their name, they'll buy it, but they're not going to do an on-chain transaction. And the reason why is there are so many different extensions out there right now. ENS is the top with .eth. You have .crypto from Unstoppable. You have .sol from Solana. And then it goes down from there and diminishes a little. But I went off on a tangent on that one. People will end up on the buying part of it. They won't buy it on the blockchain because that puts blood in the water. If I know that you're...
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, suddenly then everybody and their mom wants to buy it before you do.
It's what's happening right now. And I'm even in a bad habit of it too. So earlier today, we're not going to pull up the profile photo during the call. You guys can if you got devices around. But I picked up red, white, and blue land.eth. I personally think it's stupid that we're trying to get Greenland. I don't think we're going to get it. I don't think we should have it. I think it should stay itself. But I got that name because that's what Congress just said. They're going to try to take it and rename it red, white, and blue land. So now I have that as a name on the blockchain. Nobody else can. And if it becomes an official country, I now own the name of a country on the blockchain, and we have to have a conversation if they ever want to utilize it. So in one way, I've put myself as a bottleneck in many different situations, and that's going to lead to potential conflict down the line. But I'm willing to have a conversation with people because I'm not trying to screw them over. I want companies to be their names on the blockchain, and I want to have that proprietary information and proof that they are that name.
See, whoever knew fascist imperialism can be so much fun.
I have a few of those as well to prevent those people from using it. So there's a few Massachusetts-based hate groups who will never own their names on the blockchain.
Yeah. That's awesome. It's almost as good. It's at least equally, if not better, than copywriting. And like that church that copyrighted the Proud Boys.
Get out of my head. That was the exact next point I was going to say. They lost their name to the church. And the same thing with that it wasn't Parkland, maybe. There was one school shooter, Nicholas something. He lost his name to one of the victims. The victim now owns his name, preventing him from ever doing any TV stories, news releases, writing a book. The kid is just going to rot in a cell now, and one of the victims owns his name and all the rights to it.
Right.
So what's in a name is crazy because you can actually own someone's name like that. I have My Pillow Guy. I have Mike Lindell.e. I have some of the fun ones. I have the guy who started Project 2025. His name may be able to be worth something at some point. But some of the purchases are just out there. Some, like, I'll throw you a fun one because I'm wearing this. I picked up Web3 RPG the other day. Someone let it expire. I play a lot of role-playing games, so I picked it up and was like, it's just a little fun little one hanging in my bag.
I love that descriptor. It's hanging in my bag, man.
All these different naming services, the fun part about this, though, is some of them are perpetual and some are renewals. For the most part, a lot of them are renewals. .eth for Ethereum is a renewal. Unstoppable domains, theirs are all perpetual. So that's where I ended up sinking a majority of my funding years back. And I think part of that was just a little bit of my mental health wasn't doing so great, and it was quick dopamine of buying domain names. So I was pouring all my money into them. And one part here we haven't discussed yet, this resolution, .eth doesn't resolve and probably never will in browsers because Ethiopia has priority on the 3-digit country code.
Interesting, yeah. There
won't be that because that's a conflict. But the creators of ENS said, we didn't make this to be like web pages. It's your username and who you are on the blockchain. Vitalik Buterin, the creator of Ethereum, uses Vitalik.e, and you can follow people on this. So if we want to discuss some of the benefits now of these identities, if you use Farcast or anything on the Fediverse or some of the different protocols that are out there that allow you to have decentralized social media called DESO, DESO. If I follow Ryan on a decentralized platform by following wallet to wallet, and then he goes and not spins up a new account, but starts using a new platform, I might be made aware of that through a notification of sorts. But if I go to that platform, I'm already following Ryan. So that's one of these benefits is you can actually bring your communities with you no matter where you go, and they don't just all fall off. And we've seen that with influencers and other companies. If their account gets taken down or swindled or whatever happens with it, they might lose their entire follower count. You're not going to get it all back. So that's another one of the things here is it follows you. If you're on Instagram, there was a guy, John Shahidi, last year, lost his name @John. Somehow he signed in and it was just a bunch of numbers after. And he's like, I've had this for a decade. My name got taken from me. You have no recourse. You don't own that name. You have no right to that name. You're not entitled to it. The companies that pay for their names on platforms have protection, but they pay for it. The yellow check marks on Twitter are $1,000 a year for a business or 10 grand for a business. So when you see those companies, if someone ever got their name somehow by hacking it or scamming and using it, they have the protection that they could contact Twitter and say, hey, someone's using my name. It's not us. Give us access.
Yeah. But outside of that,
you and I
have none. You have no recourse.
Yep.
This speaks to what you're describing right now speaks to in a world where the next sort of gen of everything is smoother transitions between uses, right? And services, right? How do we create a world that is, from the end user, more centralized? With fewer devices, I can access more platforms that are going to talk with each other. And so my experience is as seamless as possible, right? How do we create a world where that's possible, but that on the back end, particularly with any financial work going on, it's as decentralized as possible? In other words, like to Ryan's point earlier, right? All of this eventually comes into the real world outside of the digital space. And in the real world, there's strategic reasons why we decentralize things, right? Even when we talk about democracy, bureaucracy, which can be a pain in the ass, was more or less created, right, to decentralize and to kind of make it difficult to do certain things so that we had it's what seems like a time waster in that space is actually there so that it's harder to do things. So people have to really think about it. And while they're thinking about it, they might say, oh, there's other consequences that we didn't initially think about, making a decision, right? And so we want to have the right kind of decentralization in places. So it makes it harder for people who would do wrong with your money, as an example, make it harder for them to be able to do that, right? Make it more complex and more complicated, rather, not complex, for them to do it, right? And discourage a lot more. So this sounds like these are solutions that allow to create a world that for the end user becomes a lot more seamless, right? And a lot more readily available to me, and create, I can do more with less devices, also less effort on my part to go from, I'm going to be, transacting a bunch of financial transactions right now. And then I might be working on something more strategic related to the work I do over here. And then the next thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And on the part of like, how are we going to get to that? A big thing that I keep reading in all these articles and I'm seeing it is hiding the wires. So if you were to go on Amazon right now on your account, they stopped it 2 years ago, but they had a digital assets tab. Facebook had the digital assets tab, but Amazon was supposed to do a marketplace, but then NFTs fell out. They halted it for a sec. Imagine you go on your Amazon account and you're able to search on the marketplace. They have NFTs and other stuff and you buy them. They have memberships, other stuff. And then you have a tab that says digital assets, and that's where they all are. And if you need to send them to someone, you can do it there. That's one of the ways they're hiding the wires on these things, is just your wallet is in your account. So they create a crypto wallet for you. They hold the keys and they put it in. So that would be a custodied wallet. So that would be the instance of that. If you think back Coinbase, when that first started, custody wallet, you create a username with them. Generally you do KYC for bigger transactions and other stuff. But I think a lot of the area where we're getting the hold up here is going to be KYC. Every single thing we do online, if it involves money, the government wants to know who's transacting. So if the future that I see, when you go to sign into all these different applications, Web 1 had, and if I pull up a visual I've had over here for a while, Web 1 is username and password. So we were used to that on the read level. Web 2, sign in with Google, sign in with Facebook, sign in with Twitter. So you have federated access and federated logins. Web 3, connect your wallet or sign in with a Web 3 ID. So you're either connecting a wallet and the wallet is your user ID through your address, or you sign in with a Web 3 ID. Like if you go to Unstoppable Domains right now, if you have a certain NFT in your wallet, like Laranger.crypto, I can say I want to sign in with that. And then I sign in using that name, and that's my name that I'm using in that session. So we have the ability to do that. We're hiding the wires to a lot of it. On the technical side, Coinbase was doing wallet as a service, and there's also MPC wallets, multi-party custody. You would have half of the secret phrase, and I would have the other half. And then eventually someday when you want to take your wallet from that company and then run off with it, you request the other half of the phrase, you get it, you're done.
Imagine a vibrant region that embraces innovative technology and systems, allowing individuals and businesses to grow and thrive within the natural and cultural lifestyle of Vermont. Imagine the Black River Innovation Campus. Our community includes business and technology programming, co-working and technology tools, and other exciting experiences that are quickly creating an outsized impact to our little corner of northern New England here in Springfield, Vermont. PC Mag rates Springfield, Vermont number 8 for the best work-from-home cities in the U.S. Join us in Vermont. Begin your journey at bricvt.org.
So we're having those options. Another one was human backup. So you could set, Vitalik talked about this too and what he wants in a wallet. If you have 3 friends, let's say they're family members either, and you say, these are the people that if I ever get locked out of any of my stuff can say all 3 of us vote yes, and it's a multi-sig. So you're using human connections at that point. You introduce risk there because your kid gets mad at you or your wife's mad and they don't want to sign in on stuff. Like you got that type of stuff.
In the corporate world, this is, you have an attorney that has one, your banker has one, and then maybe you have a secondary attorney that has one, so that when you're doing your day-to-day transactions, your banker and your attorney can verify a transaction. But if something happens to you, they can pull in that third attorney that validates that you've really passed away or you're really capacitated, and then their key is available to finish that transaction.
That's your proxy. You have your third proxy.
That can amplify to multiple various entities could be involved in that type of a mechanism.
That can be used for a will as well, to execute a will, because you can deal with things posthumously. I messed that word up, but we're going to run with it. So on that part of it of like having things be centralized but decentralized. That's been a big kind of argument with some folks that are against blockchain. People are always telling us, look, you guys are still building on Web 2, but you call everything decentralized or want it. And it's like, balance. You need a little bit of this to get to that. Not everything should be decentralized. There are use cases of everything. It's just nuance. We just have to get back to adding nuance into things in conversation. And I feel like we can push it further. On that part of it too, Scott, a big issue I've been having with companies with these names is they don't have a team set up yet for who's going to control the wallet, who's going to control the name, who's going to execute on any of this stuff, who's their point of contact for digital identity. Yeah. And with the original stuff, you have your social media folks that work at a company and they're handling putting up posts and all that. But that person doesn't own the account. Maybe they use something like a privileged access manager and they cycle through passwords on who's working on it. But that company never actually owns that name.
Yes.
Is giving the ability for the founders, creators, CEOs of companies to actually own the names of them. And then from there, you can defend it, use it. And I will let you get a word in. Avalanche has AVHY, AVVY. That's their naming service. They have a warning that says there are none in place yet. And this has been up for 3 years now. So I'm wondering when. We are going to have revocation agents installed in future domains. So if you squat on a corporate one, like a company name, and they submit a UDRP, we have an agent installed in the smart contract of that domain where we can revoke it. That doesn't exist in other naming services right now. And then Unstoppable Domains is the only one out of, you can do it with Solana and Algorand, but it's tough. They have a protected list on Unstoppable. So you can type in your company name and fill out their trademark request form, and they'll protect your company name. So anytime I want to get any of my name in the new extensions they're putting out, I have to email them and they put it in my cart for me. So this is something that I've been telling companies with Boston Blockchain Association and Boston DAO and others. If you're starting a company, go protect your name and get your name first before you tell anyone what your name is. It's that easy to just do those audits, find out who you are. And the reception of some of these companies without naming who they are, about 1.5 years ago, I tried pitching one to a company in person in Boston, and they just kind of brushed me off and whatnot. And I found out after, they freaked out. They said they were taken aback. They were like, someone else owns our name on the blockchain. We didn't even know you could do that. So it was like all this new information. And I tried taking it with an approach of, hey, this is new to me as well, talking to you guys about this. I want to teach you guys about some stuff of what these names are and hear how you guys handle it internally from a company aspect. And instead, it just freaked them out. And these are like people that are, I'm going to sound ageist because it's technology, but these were some financial tech people in their 60s, which I do work with a bunch of those folks. And there are folks that understand what I'm saying in that front, but it's kind of that generation of digital wasn't always at the forefront of everything they did. It was paper, it was cash, it was fiat.
Now they're very much in a transitional period, right? As far as formatting goes of business information.
And that's where I've seen Unstoppable Domains generally talks to a lot of digital transformation officers. And I used to talk to them when I was at Nuance as well, but it's still fallen upon deaf ears at some of these companies of, hey, your name is owned online. Here's some info about it. Do you guys want to learn more? And then just crickets. So it still feels early. And Forrester and Gartner said back in 2022 that 2025 to 2027 is going to be the time for digital identity. So we're slowly moving towards it. Some people picked up MelaniaTrump.sol, sold it for $47,000 back when the coin came out. So people are squatting on Trump's names, family members' names, company names, you name it. Someone's got it out there. I have Rutling.ph for you.
There was a Trump coin like 2016, maybe even before that. There was a Trump coin, like a crypto launched. That was its own blockchain or something.
It must have been right after he announced his first campaign, right? That would have been an opportunity.
It might have been before that, not too long. But, you know, the idea of just copy paste the blockchain, launch your own coin, like it was a little harder back then, but it wasn't that far fetched. And so there was a lot of those that were, labeled, shit coins. And, that's what it was. And now the meme coin is kind of that, similar thing. Is just so easy to launch a meme coin and then tie it to something. And it's really interesting, the point that you made about, approaching these guys and they kind of get freaked out. It also brings up this idea of credentials, right? That's a huge part of our identity as professionals, as students, is what are your real credentials? And it also brings into question, like, what are credentials today as we define them versus what could they become, where, kind of what you're building in the sort of trove of names that you have and the relationships that you build where you do transfer that name over to somebody, that in itself is a credential that you were supportive and they were receptive, right? And it speaks volumes to the fact that there's tons of people building this space that don't really get it. They get something and they're in there, they've got their blinders on, they're on their rails. They don't really get the big picture of what's really going on and all the inner workings between names and identity and custody and, what does it all mean? It's a deep, deep pool. And
what's the first question you get asked on any app that you go to join?
What's your name?
Right.
They ask for a username or some sort of name, some identifier. Yeah.
It's what initiates every process.
And it's why we have platform fatigue and why we're so unsecure, because we're constantly either repeating passwords or just getting tired of using all these different password tools and trying to find the easier way to do things. And the whole concept of identity and authentication has become a mess, frankly, right? We're all fatigued from these platforms. So the idea that we could centralize our identity, but not on an authority, on our own authority, on our own sovereignty. We own our identity, not our state, not our government, not our country. It's our identity, and it operates on the same rails as anybody else's identity. And if we have followers, they're part of our social graph. And just like when you change phones, you move your contacts over, your identity takes your contacts with you wherever you operate. Your healthcare records should go with you wherever you operate and interact, right? Your financial records should be able to seamlessly interact with whatever instruments, tools, resources, managers that you want to interact with. And we don't have that today because, frankly, there's a lot of power in that not being in our hands. And whoever is holding that information has the power. And so they're all vying for that power, trying to get another user, trying to get another login, trying to get another source of cookies and data.
And on the behavior side of things, would both of you agree that it's pretty commonplace nowadays to scan a QR code or get a push notification?
I mean, it's a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if people can use that, they tend to want to use it. Even people, by the way, who are not super tech savvy, they do know how to take a shot with the camera. And so I watch a lot of people just do it. They'll be at a conference or they'll be at a festival.
I think.
Yeah. Or it's your LinkedIn, right? You get hit up more and more for that. And you go, that's interesting how you're in one of the most unsecure environments. You could be at like a fair, like a state fair, and, snap our QR code and enter to win or whatever. And people are doing it like 6 times while they're at the Big E. And you go, that's interesting because in this crowd, it's like the equivalent, it's the digital equivalent of I'm afraid to flash my wallet when I take it out to take the money out because someone's going to see I got a lot of money in there. You know what I mean?
That's part of this naming stuff too. The CEO of Unstoppable Domains, I'm not going to call him out on the podcast, but his name, first name, last name, .eth, shows that he has over $1 million portfolio. And I mean, if you saw him in public and you were a bad person, what's he going to say to you? I left my private keys at home. All right, then we're going to your house. This just happened. I think it was one of the former guys that was leading Ledger was captured with his wife, kidnapped a couple of weeks back, and they cut his thumb off for biometric scans.
Man, that's crazy.
Yep. So speaking of that, because we're going to talk about cutting off hands.
What a segue.
Biometrics. I just actually was listening to a really good conversation. Yeah, Albert.
This is good for the YouTube live version. Here we go.
Let me find I got NFC on. And then I think right here, yep, I'm not going to show it to you, but that's my to-do list. So
yeah,
I ended up putting a Google Sheet on there right now. So that way when I'm walking around and when ADHD gets to me, I can go, what am I supposed to be doing right now? I tap my phone in my hand and I pull it up right there.
Because he's got a chip in his hand.
Yep. Little NFC chip. It's from dangerousthings.com. There is a TED Talk from Amal Grafstra from 13 years ago. And the reason he put a chip in his hand, he worked at a secure facility on tech working with servers. And every time he would exit the building to pick up heavy stuff, he would have to badge in again, open the door, put stuff down, all that. And he's like, what if I can just tap something to the door? That's all it was just, I don't want to keep lifting things and putting them down, up and down, back and forth.
Damn, that is dedication right there.
There's a very cool video. I think he did a Vice TV one that was different, where he actually did a biometric trigger lock on a P90. So he had a P90, put a trigger lock in it, and he shows with his hand. When his hand is near it within about this much, it unlocks the trigger. As soon as he moves his hand away, it's gone. It's just
That's wild.
there's the concept of, do you want a false open, like false positives and stuff, so that way you can still use the gun even if not? Or what happens if it's not getting a read, or your chip dies one day and you can't use your gun with a home invader? All sorts of fun things. And I dealt with that at Nuance with a few manufacturers that wanted voice biometrics in the weapons. They didn't proceed with it, but they were still exploring that technology.
Right.
And now what's interesting, though, is some of the ways you can use, advanced biometrics require a good amount of connectivity. If you want to use like really good retina biometrics and other types of multi-sensor biometrics. But on the flip side, one of the methods of sort of reducing the need to authenticate is through just the accelerometer gyroscope in your phone, recognizing your patterns of movement, right? Recognizing what should be normal and what might be abnormal, and therefore abnormal behavior might raise your risk profile by the algorithm and then say, oh, we need you to re-authenticate. So there's a lot of capability to really make this easy for people, but it requires a certain amount of sort of universalization of the standards that we use and the way people interact with them.
And we had a risk engine at RSA. So customers could set up a risk engine, and this was only with our cloud-based, because you don't glance any data off of people doing like an on-premise type of verification. It's yes or no. So with the stuff that was in the cloud for MFA, like push notifications, biometrics, we had fingerprint, facial recognition, and iris, and got rid of iris back in about 2018. People weren't using it. They thought it was too hardcore of biometrics, so they just didn't use it. And one of the areas I wanted to talk about with this, it's a concept I came up with a while back. I think you'll like this concept, Scott, too. And Ryan, you'll love it. I think I've mentioned it to you before, too. Identity loss. So not identity theft. Identity theft is temporary, or it affects you throughout life. Like 2020, someone stole my SSM, because that happened to all of us in Massachusetts, and was trying to file for unemployment. So unemployment fraud was going on. I froze my credit. It was happening to everyone. Identity loss is you permanently create the inability for someone to utilize a digital identity. So I have a lot of different companies' names. If I sent them to a burn wallet, and to explain a burn wallet, not to patronize anyone, there's a wallet on Ethereum. The wallet address is 0x000 repeating, and then the last four are DEAD. It was purposefully set up as a black hole. Anything that gets thrown into it, burned off the blockchain, just meaning it's inaccessible. No one owns the keys. No one's getting inside that. It's a smart contract meant to burn shit off the blockchain. People put their coins to it. So if you have a coin that 1% of every transaction burns, that's where it's burning to. So with that being said, if you send a company's renewable name, like a .eth, to that wallet, I think Elon.eth is in there right now for another 7 years. So for 7 years, nobody can buy that name. It's in there. No one controls it. When it expires, it'll go through the typical expiration and grace period, and then someone can purchase it. But until then, you can't use it. So that is a little bit of identity loss, because you physically cannot use it.
But can you still see it? If you went looking for it, it would come up.
So if somebody sent something to that name, though, that name would...
It's persona non grata, right? Like it doesn't come back. You can't access it ever again.
Yep.
For the 7 years.
Can't change the records, can't do anything for the 7 years.
Well, you can access the name for 7 years, but if you sent currency to it, that's gone forever.
Yep. All that stuff is gone. Anything that gets sent to that burn wallet. But for unstoppable domains, there's our perpetual. So if you send anything to that, it's gone forever. So I've brought
because it's that, like you said, it's a black hole, right? It's a digital gravitational zero land where it's just. So that also means it's as if it never existed again. I understand that, but could you then create a new version of it again?
If you create a new version, it would either be on some sort of alt route. So you'd have to do some sort of alt route. And I'll give you an example of that. Unstoppable Domains caught a lot of flack years ago because they are considered a CNS, centralized naming service. They're not actually decentralized per se. They can shut off their extensions. Ethereum name service claims they can't shut off .eth. It's going. Unstoppable can shut off any of theirs, and they had to. They came out with .coin years ago. A bunch of us bought a bunch of .coin, and we bought them of coins and projects. And then Unstoppable found out from Emmercoin. Emmercoin started .coin in 2014. So Unstoppable was like, we're not going to try to bully you out of this or anything like that.
So it sort of nullifies the second company from doing that, if it can be proven that it existed in the first place.
There's a lawsuit going on right now for .wallet. So Wallet with Richard Kirkendall and I can't think of the other guy's name right now, but I own it. But I have a bunch of theirs to eventually give them. And like some of this stuff, it seems like people creating friction online and people having these little battles. Any of the person that I jokingly might beef with or stuff like that online, if I own their name, I have no problem giving it to them and having a conversation as long as people are mature about it, which still feels like that could be a little bit of bad faith. Like that person has to be mature. They can't tell me to go F myself and I'll still give them their name type of thing. But it's wild. I don't know, man. It's something where like, because you can't just pull these things from the wallets as well, it gives you a little bit of safety in it. But it's also that part where like I've identified that I own a bunch of these company names because I'm not trying to do bad things with it. But if you look, I've audited the Fortune 100. If I sent you that audit and you looked, you could look at the contents of the wallets that own them. You can tell right out of the gate, it's not the company. If you look in one and you see that it has like really bad stuff or not safe for work things and other stuff, you're like, that wallet's not owned by a company. Even if you look and check, was it airdropped or was it purchased? I can send you stuff. If I knew what your crypto wallet was, I could send you stuff, good or bad. Mark Cuban, someone sent him something years ago that had some pretty colorful language and bad stuff in it, and he found a way to try to scrub it from the blockchain. It was like in the metadata and had bad things. Someone found his wallet, sent it to him. He didn't want that being associated with him. So there's stuff that's going on now too. You can find Tom Brady's wallet. He's part of Steve Aoki's Aokiverse. So you can see that he's a holder. You can trace all these things back. So part of it is like, we have these digital identities and we have these followers and we have these groups and people get deplatformed as well. So in a way to not get deplatformed, you build a follower decentralized. If any of these platforms kick you off, go to another one or spin up something on your domain through IPFS and make a decentralized website. All sorts of things. You can use these for whistleblowing as well.
That seems to me in and of itself would become a service more than just a boutique industry in the future.
Also, if you think about the concept of burner phones are very common with people just selling weed and stuff like that. You can do that with crypto. You create a blockchain wallet. It has no information associated with it. You enable push protocol. So that allows chat between wallets. And then you enable Ethermail. And now you can email and chat message encrypted. And then when you're done with it, you just basically delete the wallet, get rid of the wallet, get rid of the private keys. It's gone.
So I'd like to wrap this conversation, wrap it up with the opportunities, right? My good man here and co-host Ryan Munn has been educating me as an example on exactly what's at stake and where the real opportunity lies in Vermont. For one, so Ryan, this is both a statement and a question. I mean, there's this opportunity here, right? Amongst our captive insurance, the bulk of what represents financial services, including captive insurance in the state of Vermont, right? And so like to the two of you, drill down for the listeners, like what's the opportunities here?
Yeah, well, so first of all, captive insurance being the place where, insurance is born, right? Anything that might hit the commercial market can get sort of field tested and collect the data required to comply with commercial insurance needs. So we started thinking about different kinds of cybersecurity insurance, errors and omissions insurance, and all the potential insurance that you might consider to be necessary if you have a name that has value, or if you have, if you want to be looking at the way records are handled and how that has value, how my data is handled and how that has value, then name resolution and the application of names and security around names becomes important. And one of the things about captive is that, it's not about collecting premiums and paying out claims. It's about collecting the premiums and not paying out, right? You want to not have that risk. And so these mechanisms are a way to mitigate that risk in the fact that you do hold those keys and you have that name. But then further, what Web3 IAM is doing, what Justin is doing, is creating this verification, right? So he's doing the human work around those names to identify, hey, this is a company name, but it's not really owned by them. Or, hey, this one is the company name. It is owned by them. And oh, by the way, now that this is on blockchain, we can add more metadata to that makes other sources of information about that company verifiable as well.
Yeah, Ryan hit it out of the park with that. And part of it is just having a public repository out there where you can say, and this is part of my tagline, who are you on Web3? We can all, when any of us get in introductions with people, we can say who we are on Instagram, how to find us on Facebook, who we are on LinkedIn. We talk about all these ways to identify ourselves. Why not give yourself one name that transcends all that? And part of the opportunity that's here through Vermont Captive as well is setting that standard. So if any company that's dealing with financials for themselves, with customers, anything like that, has to have KYC and KYB, the government needs to know if these companies are doing things financially, I would assume, on the blockchain as well. So if they're doing something on the blockchain and they have a wallet, that wallet should contain the name of their company as well, verifications for it. And then from there, you link the Web2 socials as well. And then I want it just to be beyond any sort of reasonable doubt, this company is who they claim to be online. And the benefit there is also total cost of ownership goes down on transactions if you do them direct with your consumers. It's just a blockchain thing. And that's where I think a lot of these companies are going to move towards accepting stablecoin payments, having them auto-converted via Stripe into US dollars. And that way they can accept crypto from everyone. They never have to hold anything other than US dollars. And all the transaction fees go from 1% to 3% for MasterCard and Amex and all that to 0.1% or so.
But it also makes the actual compliance really and the auditability really accessible, right? So once these things are happening on blockchain, it makes the job of regulators and any other watchdogs really easy, right? They can go to Etherscan or any of the other blockchain scanners to go, okay, who's this? Or if they have the name, like, so they say, part of the rules is, hey, you have to have a name that resolves so that we can put that name in our record so we know what to look for. And instead of trying to go after a long string of letters and numbers, they can just enter the name and observe what is that entity doing on the blockchain. And that makes compliance much, much easier, reporting much easier, lowers the cost of compliance and reporting substantially.
And Justin, you gave examples earlier of companies that are close to, if not entirely in the dark, about their identity in the Web3 space. So is it going to be like earlier iterations of cybersecurity where it's going to take some, a couple of examples of massive problems for everybody else to go, it's like you need a punitive event or two to happen before people go, oh, maybe we need to invest time and get knowledgeable about this. Like, is this going to be another iteration like that? Or do you just think, like, with the general financial instability and unpredictability that suddenly has accelerated, since the start of just this year, are people just going to quietly start to adopt? And then maybe we get to a certain point where more stability and more, because, as a result of, or a result of all factors, it converges. And then luckily, most people, most companies, most institutions have gotten it right.
So you brought up a good point at the start. I like to say that, like, until there's the airbag wasn't invented until there was an accident, right? Like, you were driving the car
until there were metal dashboards that, and no seatbelts.
So in that same way, on what you're saying, I haven't seen bad stuff happen yet using these. I know how to do bad stuff with these, but I don't want to get sued, so I'm not going to. Examples, pen testing. I can take any of these company names, convert them into an email address through Ethermail. So it could be vericode.eth@ethermail.io, and I could email all of their employees because I could go on the dark web. I could get all the employee emails, or I could just go to Apollo and just rip all the emails of the employees and then send them a phishing email pretending to be Veracode. So I could pen test companies, and if any of them respond, send it to the CEO and go, I did something illegal and pen tested your employees.
Let's not make this episode too much of a blueprint for those that don't worry, we don't have that many listeners.
We can talk more at another time. I think that's a good place to wrap this up. Nobody gets themselves in trouble. But thank you. Seriously, Justin. I know how important this is. I know how important the work is that you're doing. And it's really valuable for folks to be able to learn this and plug in. So web3im.com.
Correct.
That's when they find your operation. They could reach out if they want to get some advice on getting their own personal name, their business name, or a company they work for, maybe, if they want to start that conversation and help steward that into a productive conversation about protecting their names.
And that was exactly what I was going to say for my suggestion of like to impart some knowledge onto everyone before going. If you have a last name or even a first name in particular that's rare, go and check all the different blockchain things, Ethereum name service, Unstoppable Domains, Solana name service. If you have a unique or original name and it's still available, just please go get it. Get it so you have it. You know that you have it, because you can use that for family members with subdomains, all sorts of different use cases. But a lot of what people align to for identity online still has to do with their surname. So if there's something that means something to you and it's unique, go get it before someone else does.
We want to say thanks to all our YouTube Live viewers. And this will be, our audio podcast will come out in about a week on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
SMG's Are We Here Yet podcast is a production of M the Media Project and SM Graves Associates. Learn more at smgravesassociates.com.